All right, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Well-Socialized Pet Chat. My name is Juliet. I know you both, so I'm not going to go into too much detail with that. So today's topic is going to be enrichment. I know both of you have cats, and Patricia, you also have a dog. So we'll touch on enrichment for both, but honestly, if you're using it for one pet, you can use it for most pets. So any resources that I share with you today or videos or whatever it is that we go through, you can make, slight modifications to it and use it for everything. So what I want to do is I want to start off by talking about what enrichment is, because it's different than just straight play, but it can involve play. So what is it? Enrichment is any activity that makes your pet work and makes them think, and typically involves species-specific behaviors. So foraging, and hunting and searching and digging and things like that, that they're going to naturally do oftentimes to find food in the environment. You'll see those types of behaviors are often part of enrichment. There are so many different types of enrichment, and we'll talk about some of those today. And actually, one more piece to touch on the enrichment versus play, and give you some more practical examples of that. I can teach, my dog or my cat to play fetch, and they could do that for an hour and have a great time doing it, burn a lot of energy and exercise and everything else. But it's different from problem solving, right? Or doing a puzzle, or like having to use their brain to think through a challenge. Those are different buckets when it comes to how we use our energy and how we kind of exercise our brains. It's really neat because we are very similar to our pets, right? In this respect, we are very familiar with the process of problem solving being more challenging for us than physical exercise in a lot of cases. So for example, you could go for a run or a hike or something like that, and then do something that requires a bit more brain function, I suppose, with your friends. Maybe it's an escape room, or something like that that requires you to like think fast. And you'd probably have plenty of energy for both of those activities. But what if you did them in reverse? You spent an hour doing some intense problem solving with a time limit, and then you had to go for that hike. That would be super hard. That's why a lot of folks, myself included, if you're going to go to the gym or something like that, it's easier to do that at the beginning of your day before perhaps, a challenging work day where you're using your brain all day. So those types of things are already familiar to us. And fun fact with our dogs, they haven't done this research in cats, but with dogs, let's see, 20 minutes of like dedicated sniffing, like on a walk or something like that, or in a foraging box, is equivalent to about an hour of physical exercise. So we really want to make sure that when we're giving our pets activities to do and things to burn their energy and ways to redirect their behavior, that we're really thinking about what we're using, because sometimes too much physical exercise actually amps us up and gets us more riled up. So if you think about, a toddler who's been running and playing for hours and they need a nap, but they are convinced they do not. They want to be up for 5 more days. We know that's not really a thing. It's not going to be successful. So with our pets, if we know they're prone to overstimulated behavior or poor impulse control or other types of things where they might show us they're frustrated, making sure that we're not just exercising them physically, but also giving them things to work their brains can help reduce a lot of those types of behaviors. So as you may have gathered from some of those little statements, there are no magic wands in training, but enrichment gets us a little bit closer to one. We can use enrichment to manage so many different types of behaviors. And again, there are so many different types of enrichment. So let's dig into that a little bit. We'll talk about types of enrichment first, and then some ways to use it a bit more practically. So I want to start by talking about enrichment and learning just in general. So training itself is enrichment. You're having to think and process and figure out, like, what did I do with my body that, made that reward come from my trainer? So for example, going into a sit, right? It's the act of sitting on the ground that gets you that reward. But when your pet is learning that behavior for the first time, they have to kind of think about that and figure out what specifically they did that made that outcome that they wanted happen. Same thing with any more advanced training, whether it's behavioral, whether it's sports, because dog sports are physical activities, but as we'll talk about, they involve a huge amount of body awareness, a huge amount of exposure to novel experiences, and all of that is very enriching and requires quite a bit of problem solving for them. So training is a great way to work some enrichment into your day, and you're probably already doing some of it. And maybe you aren't thinking about doing it with your cats yet, but it's definitely an option. And I know mine will ask for training and enrichment throughout the day. I suppose by name they will go and sit on their training mats to try and pull things out of their training bags so I get my attention, be like, hey, let's do this thing. So pets can really enjoy training as a form of enrichment and engagement just because they enjoy the activities. So we love enrichment in a learning capacity as a way to teach our pets new things. I want to spend a lot of time focusing on sensory enrichment because we can use most, if not all, of our pets' senses to provide different types of enrichment for them. And one of the biggest ones for our pets is going to be scent. Now, you've probably heard me say this before, but our dogs have an incredible sense of smell. Humans have 5 to 6 million scent receptors. Dogs have up to 300 million. So our numbers no longer sound very impressive when we hear things like that. Your cat can smell 14 times better than you can. I don't know the exact translation in numbers to scent receptors, but it's a lot more than we have and still quite a good bit less than dogs. So really, really powerful noses on our critters. So giving them new things to smell can be really fun. It could be scents from other people, other animals, other things in the environment. For example, with your cats, especially if you're going to teach them to walk on a harness and go outside, or you're going to travel with them, collecting items from outdoors, or just for safety, right? If your cat ever gets out, collecting items from outdoors, kind of in the space around your home, and just putting it into a cardboard box and letting your cat jump in and sniff around and check all those things out can be a great way to familiarize them with the specific scents in your environment. Maybe they're going to smell something that smells like the dog that lives next door that they hear barking all the time, or they see out the window, or the other cats in the neighborhood. This is a nice way to introduce a whole bunch of new information for them, because when they're smelling things, they're not just noticing a scent, they're getting actual information from that scent. That is a whole other conversation on its own. So scent is huge. And actually, I'll give you some dog examples. When your dog is sniffing things like urine or feces, they can tell if it's a male or female dog, if they're spayed or neutered, they can tell if they're stressed, they can tell what they've eaten, they can tell all sorts of other, more nuanced health information, just based on the different chemicals and hormones and things like that, in their feces. Excuse me. So there's so much information they're getting. When they're smelling the ground, they're not just smelling dirt, they're smelling what's living in the dirt and what's walked through the dirt and just all different types of things. So scent isn't just it smells good, it smells bad, it smells like pizza. It's so many different nuances. So it's a really powerful way to enrich our pets' lives and introduce novelty, introduce new individuals. We can pair that with training. We talk about this in the Socializing with Animals and People chat, but we can take a new scent of a new individual, person, or pet, introduce it into our pet's environment, and whenever they interact with it in any way, as simple as looking in its direction, we can reward that behavior. And then we are building very specific emotional responses to that item. We're doing what's called building a conditioned emotional response, where we're teaching the pet, oh, when you smell this scent, something good is going to happen. It's a great way to do introductions that's a lot more active as opposed to passive introductions where we just put the thing that smells like the other individual in the environment and let our pet form their own feelings about it, which could go either direction. So being really aware of, using scent, not just as a form of novelty and a thing to give your pet information, but a way to really work it into your training for very functional, very practical purposes. We can do sound enrichment. So sound could be all sorts of things. We talk about desensitizing to sound in the second topic in this series. And I can play different sounds for my pet to expose them to things they might hear in some upcoming travels or throughout their lives. Or I know I have friends coming over for a game night, so I'm going to play sounds that I find on YouTube of people over at a house for a game night. Maybe I play some, I don't know, Critical Role or something for them so they can kind of hear the sounds of people doing a thing. But I want to make sure I'm introducing these sounds, as we've talked about before, at low volume in such a way that my pet doesn't really respond to it in any way that suggests they're at all stressed or just, excuse me, super calm and having good associations. That's going to, again, help me build the reactions I want to see to these types of sounds. And if they're sounds my pet hasn't heard before, they'll be like, oh, what is this thing that I'm hearing? And if we're introducing it at a low level, it should be a more curious or neutral response as opposed to a, what is this, I'm unsure, fearful response, right? We never want to see that. So it again gives us lots of control over our pet's environment to the degrees that we can introduce novel sounds. It also gives us a way to build some emotions for our pets in ways that set them up for success down the road. And it's novelty, it's new, it's interesting, it's going to get their attention and make them focus on something. So that's how it becomes enriching. We can do a whole lot of things with other types of tactile sensations. Dog or cat, you've probably seen them interact with something for the first time, whether it's a particularly special patch of grass or a new treat or a new bed or a new scratcher or a new toy, whatever it is. You might have seen them go up to it and sniff it and just row on it or row in that big disgusting patch of whatever that your dog has found. And that's actually a scent thing more than it is a sensory thing. They want to get that scent all over them because they're weirdos sometimes. No, they love that. But like they'll roll in textures they haven't felt before. So on new types of surfaces or in new types of environments with things that are new that they want to put their scent on. So there's lots of sensation enrichment we can do. We can also expose our pets intentionally to different types of textures, like different types of brushes. If you have a pet that needs regular grooming, get them used to different types of brush textures, whether it's a comb, whether it's a bristle brush, whether it's a curry style comb, all different types of things. Different textures and toys is really valuable for our pets because if your dog has 100 toys, but they're all tennis balls, that's not actually very interesting, right? There's no variety there. So if you're going to have 100 balls, maybe some of them are rubber and some of them are textured with like spikes and some of them have like ridges and ripples and some of them have holes and openings so you can stuff treats in, and some of them are tennis balls and some of them are squishy and fluffy and soft and some of them are really hard and they have to hold them or and carry them and chew them. You want that variety. That texture makes it really interesting. And this makes sense to us also, right? Imagine when you're sitting down and eating food. If you're having a dinner that's, like a main and some sides, you don't want everything to have exactly the same texture because that's not really interesting to your brain. You want things that might be crunchy or things that might be softer and things that might have a bit of chew and you want all those different textures. Things that feel different for you because it's more interesting than food that feels very the same. So our pets are no different, providing different types of sensation in the foods they're eating, the toys they're playing with, the surfaces they're interacting with or on. All of those things can make a difference. And in some cases, in significant ways. We talked about this, I believe, if not last week, but we've talked about it in our chats on novelty and exposure to new objects. In cats, texture in food, texture in cat litter, texture in scratchers can make a huge difference in what their preferences are. Changing one, if your cat isn't familiar with that new texture, isn't comfortable with that new texture, can be super stressful for them. So you want to expose young cats to multiple food textures. You want to try different textures to see what types of scratching material your cat likes best. If you're changing anything about their litter box, make sure that the texture, if you're changing their litter type, going from a pellet to like a sandy type texture, that's a big difference. So keeping those sorts of things in mind can help prevent some training struggles, behavioral struggles. So keep all of that in mind. Texture and sensation can be really important to pets. Additionally, we can use it to watch for comfort in new environments. For example, if you're walking a dog and they're walking on different surfaces, those surfaces feel different, the temperature will be different. All of that makes a really big difference for them. Same with surfaces that are shiny can be really challenging for dogs who haven't been on them before. So all of that is enrichment because it's novel and they're going to have to process it the first few times they interact with it. They'll always be processing it, but they'll process it the most their first few times interacting with it. That's going to bring us kind of from texture and sensation and different things with novelty into body awareness. We talked briefly about dog sports and things like that and how they're physical exercise and also mental enrichment. When you think about a dog going through a tunnel or standing on a board that rocks back and forth or going up and down like a ramp or a ladder or, anything like that, think of those like wobbly air-filled discs, all of those are a massive amount of textures and sensations and different things that your pet has to learn to do and be comfortable with. And in some cases, it's just a matter of getting used to how it feels and how your body moves when you're on it. But there's also a lot of learning that has to go into how to use your body appropriately on those tools or with those tools. So for example, I remember when I was teaching dog agility classes, teaching dogs to go over a jump, which was low enough they could walk over. That's how we started them. And oftentimes the dog would walk up to the jump and they would step over it and their back feet would hit it and they would be shocked. They would be like, I have back feet. They have hit this thing. And as your dog continues interacting with the jump, they learn to, like, put their front feet over and then lift their back legs. Initially it's one at a time for a lot of dogs, and they'll kind of bounce the back to like a hop. So, they have to learn how to use their bodies to interact with a new object successfully. So body awareness is super helpful. In training with my cats, one of the skills I've been teaching them is to flex their paws so I can see their or their toenails, rather, so that I can do nail trims more easily without having to like press and interact with their paws like that. So that again is a lot of body awareness. How am I using my body to accomplish this task? How does it feel? How does it make a difference? What are the rewards and the outcomes? All of those things are really rewarding for our pets, and letting them show you what they can do with their bodies, what they can do with their different skills, and how we can show them that those choices and actions have value, have rewards, is also, again, going right back to training, a really enriching form of working together and teaching your pets how to most effectively communicate and do different things that are already perhaps skills they maybe have the first few steps naturally built in for. The flexing of the paws happens because my cats flex their paws all the time when they're yawning, when they're grooming, when they're excited and playing. So I just had to capture it and add a reward the moment I saw it happen, and then build that as a behavior I could ask for on cue. More complex than it sounds, but things that we can do, right? With things our pets already do, we can add value to it. So we really want to be aware of that. The last piece I want to touch on is, excuse me, a really cool concept called contra freeloading. Now, most folks haven't heard this term before, but you're probably familiar with the concept. One second. I'm getting over a mild head cold. So contra freeloading, it as a concept, is choosing to do work for a reward, even when the same reward is freely available. So this is, I guess, a common example a lot of folks have heard of is like the rat in a maze, where you present the rat a bowl of food and they can just have that bowl of food, and you present the rat at the same time a maze with the same exact bowl of food at the end, and they can choose what they want to do. Overwhelmingly, statistically speaking, scientifically, they will choose to do that obstacle course or that maze or whatever it is to get the food reward, even though they could just go eat the other bowl of it that's sitting right here. So this makes sense, right? Sometimes it's nice to kind of just like get what you're looking for without having to work for it. But after a while, for a lot of us, that gets a little bit boring, and it's kind of fun, to work and achieve that reward. So it's the same for our pets. They've demonstrated this across species. So contra freeloading is a really cool way of using enrichment to give our pets their daily diets. So for example, with my cats, you can kind of see behind me, I have a whole cat set up. We have cat walls and we have all sorts of stuff, and it goes all around this I guess 3/4 of this room. And my cats have their food bowls right behind me on top of their cat cubby, which is full of enrichment activities. They have their food bowls up there, and they get wet food in the morning and they get dry food throughout the day in that bowl. But about half of their dry food doesn't actually go into the bowl. It gets put around on all the various parts of their cat walls and cat entertainment unit, as part of a scavenger hunt. And my cats love that. They will start eating their wet food in the morning when I put it out, and while they're eating that, I'll go and I'll hide portions of their food all around the spaces they tend to go and hang out, and they love to go hunt and search for it. They'll usually stop eating their wet food as soon as they see me hiding stuff out, because they have spots that are their favorites, and they like beating their sister to their preferred spots. So they love that. They look forward to it every day. If I'm rushing in the morning and I just kind of put some of their food out and I haven't put out the scavenger hunt, they will yell at me. They really, really enjoy that. And like I mentioned, they'll also go sit on their training mats that I will sometimes put away after class and sometimes keep out for a day or two, depending on what we're working on. And if they are deciding they want to engage, they will go sit on their mats and meow at me and demand that I interact with them in some way. But they love that sort of enrichment. They love working and doing that for their food and their treats, but they will ask for it, which is really, really cool to me. And when they will have, as I mentioned, food available in their bowls, and they would prefer to go and do the work and find it that way first. So comfort freeloading is a pretty neat concept. And if you have an animal who eats really quickly, or who it seems like they're really hungry throughout the day or at night, and they're keeping you up, scavenger hunts are a great way to give them their food over a longer period of time. And there's tons and tons and tons of enrichment that you can stuff with food. So most of us have heard of Kongs. They're the standard one is like a beehive shaped, I don't know, container, I guess. And you can stuff it with kibble, you can stuff it with peanut butter and dog cheese and yogurt and baby food and all sorts of things. If you go to the Kong website, I believe the section is now called Kong Cuisines, but they have tons of different recipes on there for stuffing the Kongs. And some of them are really simple, like just stuffing kibble or treats in there. And some of them are really complex. You have a bunch of different stuff layered with different textures, and you freeze it, which makes it take longer and can be really great if you have a dog who's teething and it's good for their gums, or it's hot outside. It can be really cooling for them. My cats also like ball pits, so do many dogs. A ball pit is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You get a container that is safe for your pet to be in. So whether it's a kiddie pool or whether it's a cardboard box, you fill it with items that are, again, safe for your individual pet, whether it's actual ball pit balls or tennis balls or other types of toys, or in my cat's case, crumpled up balls of paper. And you just toss their breakfast in there, or you toss some treats in there. You do a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, and they'll forage and they'll dig, and they're using their paws, they're using their nose, they're using their eyes to search for all of those food items. And that is great fun. It is adorable to watch. And it's really fun, natural species, specific behavior for them. They are hunting, they are foraging, they are doing what they would do in a natural environment. So again, great way to slow your pet down, great way to build in some kind of passive activities. This can be great for older pets as well, or pets who are more sensitive to their environment, whether they're fearful or reactive. If they get stressed by going outside, do really short walks where it's like, just go potty and then come in and do enrichment. They're still going to burn the energy. And as long as we're not, overfeeding and they're gaining weight by not having as much physical exercise, they don't need long walks. They don't need to do that in a lot of cases. So make sure your pet is comfortable. Provide things that help them burn energy in the ways they need, but in ways that feel the most safe and the most successful. So really important stuff there. Gosh, there are so many pieces to enrichment. I want to pause and see if there are any questions about the things that I've touched on so far. And I know we're recording, so you don't have to turn your cameras on if you don't want to, but any questions about how to use enrichment for your own pets? I'm going to share a couple more things, if there aren't, but I'm going to leave these. Yeah.
I just have a question. On your cat wall that you have built there, are those things that were already pre-designed, or is that something you guys like bought cubbies and then cut holes in them?
So yes and no. Obviously, like all of the cat wall stuff was pre-designed. I will say, measure your cats better than I did when you buy them, because these ones are definitely too narrow and Sapphire almost falls off them on a regular basis. But this is actually a piece from IKEA. And I had to take it apart. Well, I hadn't built it yet, but I did have to cut holes in that material. And I think that my friend used I want to say a jigsaw for that, but it was a bit of a process. Like, it's not like it was a pain to cut through, from what I understand. So find someone who's got some tools, but yes, you can do stuff like that. They do sell things like that also. So just do some price comparisons and figure out like what makes the most sense as far as like time, budget, and materials that you would need to make stuff like this. But there are so many options like this. And I will say, an unendorsed plug for IKEA. IKEA has a lot of furniture that you can really easily convert into stuff for your cats. It's kind of great. If you go to, I think some of it's publicly available now, but Jackson Galaxy has a program that I was introduced to through his work with shelters, where he called it catification, I believe. Oh gosh, I hope that's right. But he talks about like, there's an entire like several page spread in this document that we got where they tell you about like different products from IKEA and how to use them for a cat wall. So when I redo some of these pieces that are a bit too narrow, I'll be going to IKEA and getting some of their really basic like shelves and the brackets because they're like, at least they were $2 and $3 a piece. So like really inexpensive, really easy to do. So yeah, IKEA is great for repurposing for some of those purposes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? And I'm going to pull up a really fun little video of contra freeloading that I want to share because it's cool. So give me one moment to find that. And you'll get some of this in your follow-up email. Let's see. Where did my contra freeloading examples go? Oh, they're in the enrichment playlist. Just kidding. So we have a whole playlist on enrichment. We have a whole 45-minute presentation on enrichment that goes into more like specific examples of like how to build some enrichment and what it looks like and more things like that. So you'll get all of that in the follow-up email, as well as the whole playlist itself. But let me show you what some contra freeloading looks like. We'll do this one. Okay. Come on, Zoom. All right. So this is just an example of a meerkat who has a tray, as you can see, with some kibbles and some food in it here. And instead, he's choosing to go through the pipe and pull stuff out that way. So this is a lot more rewarding for him. And there's, again, as you can see, there's kibble on the ground. We would rather play with that pipe and get things out of it that way than take that kind of really easy access food. So kind of neat. Animals will overwhelmingly choose to do this, and we love it. There's actually one other video I'm going to pull up for you all real quick. So bear with me. Pull it up while we're finishing that. Ah. Okay. Okay. It's also a tiger doing some there. But let me show you one of my favorite videos, which is this one from Facebook. Now, there's a Facebook group called Canine Enrichment that is pretty amazing. I joined this group when it had less than 20,000 members, quite a few years ago now. And it has now, I believe, over 512,000. I think they culled some, so it might have gone down a little bit, but it's got a lot of people. So we're going to watch this video, and this video is so cool. These two girls, Penny and Copper, are absolute pros at enrichment. And as you'll see, there are so many skills that they have to use to get these treats out. I'll call them out as we're going.
Okay.
I'll kind of mute him a little bit. So we are pulling out those pegs, not one, but 3 pegs.
Copper. Okay.
The treats fall down the tube once the pegs are removed. We're lifting something from a handle. That crossbar that you see has to be spun to be opened. So we're using our nose. We can also use our paws to spin those bottles. We're pulling something out, again, by a handle. We're kind of, there we go. We have to press on that lever to access those treats. Again, lifting and pulling. Using our mouth to spin that bottle because we've done this quite a few times and we're learning some hacks to getting at it quickly. Digging in through the glove, which means putting their nose into an unfamiliar kind of small textured surface. Spinning with their paws or their face, that bone toy, which obviously some of these you can see are DIY, some of them are purchased. Again, lifting, I have to press that, I believe, to get that lever to lift up.
It's very nice of your sister to share.
So this one, we're using a little bit of brute force. We're supposed to be pulling the knob that you can kind of see on the bottom left there. But that one we just kind of ripped out. Still learning how to do that one, as you can tell. And you can see how she's kind of passing by the crossbar because it's probably the most challenging thing on here. So they save that one till the very, very end.
Good job, Penny. What happened? Where'd
There's
the
a
tree
rope
go?
toy down there as well.
Penny, they're stuck.
It's probably nailed down
You
somehow.
earned it, sweetie.
And you'll see that sometimes she pulls these pegs out and she doesn't even go look for the treat. She's like, whatevs. You know, the behavior itself can be enriching in some cases. So sometimes they'll go for the treat, sometimes they'll just do the thing, or they'll do the exercise and go for the treat. Sometimes they won't. Just depends on the individual doing the enrichment. With the toy she's interacting with now, she has to push those knobs. Same with these long white poles. She pushes the knob at the end to make the treat come forward. Similar to what the meerkat had, but on a more stable surface, we have a pipe with some holes cut in it that will make treats fall out. So just lots of different skills, lots of different body awareness and tactical skills. And when you look at things like this, and you think about how we can utilize that in training, think about dogs doing service work, right? That requires a huge amount of, practical, functional skills that they use their bodies for. So we can use enrichment to build all sorts of behaviors for our pets. It's a phenomenal stepping stone for so many different things and a fantastic tool for behavioral management as well. All right, that's going to wrap up our conversation on enrichment. Any last questions for me? All right, I'm going to stop our recording. Thank you both for joining me.